Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. I shall weep and cry over you every day and every night. I shall weep for you in tears of blood, O Imam Hussein. On the day of Ashura, she walked from the tents to the battlefield. It was Ashura, the day when 1300 years ago on the land of Karbala, the shed blood of Imam Hussein triumphed over the sword of the Umayyad tyrant Yazid. That's the day when she walked. Her brother Imam Hussein, along with more than 70 companions, loyal followers, and family members, were confronted by more than 30,000 soldiers of the Umayyad army. She walked. It was a difficult day. Al-Qasim, a young boy under 15, he was the orphan of Imam Hassan, her brother. He had died on the battlefield. Her nephew Ali al-Akbar fought with strength and valor, but he was fighting so hard, he was brutally wounded. Blood was flowing from him. He had to kneel down on the neck of the horse, but the blood went over the eyes of the horse. He couldn't see where he was going. He took him to the wrong side, to the enemy, where Ali al-Akbar was even more brutally wounded until he died. Her brother Abbas went on a mission to bring water to the thirsty children, and he never came back. She walked to the battlefield. She confronted the army. She was responsible for all the family and the children who got there just a little before her. She walked, but they ran. As the tragedy of Karbala unfolded, it reveals two distinct chapters. A chapter of battle to break the strength of Imam Hussein's movement of reform, and humiliation to break the souls of the people who remained to tell the story. There's a narration that tells us a bit more of the phase that took from the first chapter to the second chapter of the tragedy. فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَا النِّسَاءَ جَوَادَكَ مَخْزِيًّا وَنَظَرْنَ سَرْجَكَ عَلَيْهِ مَلْوِيًّا. When the women saw your horse distraught and observed your saddle contorted, they came out from the tents, disheveling their hair, striking their now unveiled cheeks, calling you by lamenting and wailing, being humiliated after being honored, hastening to where you lay wounded. What followed, what they had to see and witness, that took to the memory within all their lives and in all our lives. From the moment we understand language until the day we die, we can never hear this story except once, and that's on the night of Ashura or the day of Ashura. It's unspeakable, and it ends with the severed head of Imam Hussein on a spear. And the following chapter is when your family, O Hussein, were captured like slaves, bound with iron chains atop camels, with midday heat scorching their faces. They were driven across deserts and wastelands with their hands chained to their necks and were paraded around the markets. This happened just 50 years, 50 short years in the life of a nation after the death of a Prophet Muhammad and his passing away. Just 50 years. Just what happened on Karbala Day alone proves how much the nation, the Islamic nation, needed such a movement of reform by Imam Hussein. So Ashura was a defining day in the history of Islam, and therefore the history of all humanity, this being the last message of Allah. That moment when Zainab arrived, and she walked from the tents to the battlefield, was a defining moment. It was A defining moment because it was the battle for minds and souls to define just what happened. And that's when she went to the corpse, the body of Imam Hussein. She put her hands under it as if to lift it and said, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice and oblation." It was to declare that Imam Hussein came out for his movement out of compassion for all the nation, for all humanity, to preserve the message that was there to bring to people the best quality of life by following the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. She walked, and her name was Zainab. Just mention of her name brings tears to millions of her followers and lovers throughout the centuries. And Ashura was as much about the people who were not present as much as it was about the people who were present. "O Allah, accept the sacrifice," speaks of compassion. But it was not born in that moment. It was the climax of a tradition in that household of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Zainab is the daughter of Imam Ali, the granddaughter of the Prophet Muhammad. So let's take a view on compassionate stories about her household. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had to flee Mecca. And when he went to Medina, the people of Quraysh, the infidels led by Abu Sufyan, did not leave the Muslim nation on its own. They tried to kill the Prophet on numerous times. They fought wars and killed people. But on the day when Prophet Muhammad came back to Mecca to open it, a victorious, triumphant, entering the city, he asked Imam Ali to speak out to the people, "Al-yawm yawmul marhama." Today is the day of mercy. And when he asked people of Quraysh, "What do you think I'm going to do to you?" They said, "We can only expect the great things from you." And he said, "You can go. You are free. اذهبوا فأنتم الطلقاء." And that included Abu Sufyan, the father of Muawiyah. Zainab said, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice," because she was the daughter of Imam Ali. Imam Ali was the just ruler of the Islamic nation. And Muawiyah, then a governor on what is now Syria or the Levant, he wanted to take his own territory and rule it, to control the money, to control and have his own power. And he led a civil war against Imam Ali. At the battleground of Siffin, he was there first with his army and took control of the only water resource. When Imam Ali came in with his army, they sent a messenger to Muawiyah. "If we had come here first, we would let you have the water." But Muawiyah would refuse. Imam Ali was forced to lead his army to take back this source of water. And when they did, the people on Imam Ali's camp said, "Then we'll do the same thing. We should not leave the water for them as they've done to us." But Imam Ali asked them to take as much water as they need and leave the water resources for everyone to drink from. That speaks of compassion for people, for humanitarian values. Zainab said, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice," because she was the daughter of Fatima, herself the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. She was a mother of several children, and they were fasting one day, and then time for breaking their fast, they hear a knock on the door. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. These verses in Surah 76, verses 8 and 9 tell us that not one night they heard a knock on the door. A second night they heard a knock on the door, and they gave the person the only food they had. And the little kids had to stay on water. And on the third day, the person who knocked on the door was a captive of war. The verse speaks, And they feed for the love of Allah the poor and the orphan and the captive. We only feed you for the sake of Allah. We want from you neither compensation nor gratitude. Even the captive of war, they gave on the third day of going hungry and fasting. Fatima al-Zahra, peace be upon her, would still let the captive, the enemy of her own father, take the food, the only food they've had after 3 days of hunger for her own children. That speaks of compassion. Zainab said, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice," because she was the sister of Imam Hassan. He came after his father as the just ruler of the Islamic State, and Muawiyah was there again. They were there at the battlefield, and when Imam Hassan saw that the balance of power was not shifting any, and that thousands of lives would go wasted, and that people in the Islamic nation started wondering, what is this message? Are people fighting over rule and governance, or is there a message for truth? And out of compassion for these people to stick to the message of Allah, to stick to the values of Prophet Muhammad, he showed that he had no interest in worldly power, and he accepted a peace deal, which Muawiyah did not respect any of it. Thereafter, putting his son Yazid as the next Umayyad tyrant. Zainab said, "Oh Allah, accept the sacrifice," because she was the sister of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. There on the day of battle, they were at Karbala. The people who stopped them at Karbala was a regiment of 1,000 soldiers strong. They were sent by Yazid so that they could stop Imam Hussein from going to Kufa. So Imam Hussein asked his companions to give their sources of water, the resources, to these soldiers. The very same people who would then fight against him to kill him. In fact, before battle, Imam Hussein wept. He wept. Asked why, he said, "I cry for those people who will kill me and go to hell for doing that heinous crime." So Allah accept this sacrifice was the culmination of a tradition for this household of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, built on compassion and sacrifice. That defining moment when she said, "Oh Allah, accept the sacrifice," and all this gives us a summary of why we are connected to this household, why we would have so much affection for them, why we would want to if we were there to serve, to die for them. And Ayatollah here from Qatif, Sheikh Abdullah bin Ma'tug, who lived from 1858 to 1943, puts it in this way: if you had a beloved one be grieved, you would want to console them. If they were upset, you would want to give them solace. You would want to give them enjoyment after the harsh things they've gone through. But he contracts those intentions with actually happened. وثاكلة تسليها عداها بضرب الصوت والصوت المهيل وتؤنسها بما يدمي حشاها ويوجع قلبها من شر قيل وتسعدها إذا ندبت حماها بسب حميمها البر الوصول. The bereaved, needing solace, they would whip and lash her. Instead of consoling, they would throw at her words of derogatory nature, and instead of getting them joy after harshment, they would say the unspeakable. So we cannot console or relieve Zainab 1,300 years ago, but we could relieve today, not by doing anything to them personally, but to their message. What compassion are we showing in our day-to-day lives, within our family, at the workplace, or even on the road with these crazy drivers? What compassion are we going to give to people? What sacrifice are we going to expend towards it? We should all take a cause on ourselves not to just show and express compassion in our small activities and interactions with people, although important, but to give compassion to a cause like what Imam Hussein has done, and he gave up his life for it, to give life to this nation. Imam Hussein gave up so much to this cause. He had to leave Medina to Mecca to perform pilgrimage, but he knew that the Umayyad tyrant would want to come after him even in the most holiest of places. So on the day of Arafah, or before it, he couldn't stand on the day of Arafah, one of the most important days of the pilgrimage, and he had to head on to Iraq. But on a previous year, Imam Hussein had said such wonderful words we learned from until now. It expresses to us the nature of his movement. O God, remove my affliction, veil my defects, forgive my offense, drive away my Satan, dissolve my debt, and give me, my God, the highest degree in the world to come and in this world. And by his sacrifice, he has gained in this world what no other human has gained, of the affection and love of people towards him. And on the day after, we're sure. And it continues, O most merciful of the merciful, O God, transform us now into men successful, triumphant, pious, and prosperous. Set us not among those who despair, empty us not of thy mercy, deprive us not of that bounty of thine for which we hope, and set us not among those deprived of the mercy, nor those who would despair of the bounty of thy gift for which we hope. Reject us not with the disappointed, nor those driven from thy door. And certainly, Imam Hussein was not driven away from that door to heavens, to God. In fact, I could imagine at that defining moment, on that defining day in history, when Zainab came to lift the corpse of Imam Hussein and said, "O Allah, accept this sacrifice." It is as if I was hearing those prayers on the day of Arafah. And then there, he was entering through the doors of heaven. So Allah, accept this sacrifice and oblation. O Allah, take us on Imam Hussein's sailing boat through those doors. O Allah, grant us the intercession of Imam Hussein on Judgment Day. Grant us a truthful foothold with the loyal companions of Imam Hussein who gave up their lives for Imam Hussein. Let us speak his language that people speak all over the world, the language of humanity. Thank you. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin.